public speaking. It's an act that can cause paralyzing fear and panic. It consistently ranks at the top of our list of fears, alongside death, heights, and snakes. Comedian Jerry Seinfeld once joked about the absurdity of this fear. In his stand-up, he said, "To the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy." But why do we fear public speaking? It's not like you're in actual danger. So to better understand the multitude of possible reasons, we turn to psychology. In this Psychodemia episode, I explore psychology's 7 modern perspectives, a set of approaches used to explain why people think and act the way they do, and in this case, fear. Psychology tells us that there are many ways to think about human behavior. Psychologists use a variety of approaches or perspectives to explain why people think and act the way they do. In no particular order, these perspectives are behavioral, humanistic, cognitive, psychodynamic, biological, sociocultural, and evolutionary. These perspectives are used to explain all of human behavior, like why do some people enjoy extreme activities? Why do people develop phobias? And even why do people feel certain emotions like sadness or anger? These questions, and many more, can be answered through the lens of each perspective. Let's explore each perspective using our example from the start of this Psychodemia episode. Why do people fear public speaking? The answer? It depends on which perspective you follow. The behavioral perspective explains human behavior in terms of conditioning and reinforcement. It focuses on how we learn certain behaviors. Think about humans as passive animals, like this dog, only responding to simple environmental stimuli. The behavioral perspective argues that we are more likely to do things because of positive outcomes and less likely to do things because of negative ones. From this perspective, there really is no difference between a dog being rewarded with a treat for good behavior and a student being rewarded with verbal praise for good behavior. A behaviorist may argue that a person was conditioned to fear public speaking because they associate this experience with negative responses, like the audience chuckling after misspeaking. People may avoid public speaking for fear of embarrassment, which in this case is a form of punishment. The cognitive perspective is a counter-argument to behaviorism. This approach contends that our behavior is influenced by more than simple rewards and punishments. Rather, our behavior is influenced by how we think and interpret a situation. We are not just headless zombies walking around. Instead, we make decisions based on our interpretation of a situation. A cognitive theorist may argue a person has a fear of public speaking because of irrational or obsessive thoughts. Thoughts like, what if they see me fall? What if my zipper is open? What if they see me sweating? This is a constant worrier, a critic of themselves. In my opinion, the psychodynamic perspective is one of the most controversial perspectives, but also one of the most fascinating. It is also one of the oldest. The psychodynamic perspective argues that the unconscious mind controls our thoughts and actions. Like an iceberg, our behavior is guided by a large part of our mind we cannot see or control. Our unconscious mind is filled with memories from our childhood that are too traumatic or distressing to think about, so we repress them or push them down into the abyss. Our unconscious mind is filled with primitive drives that are in conflict with society norms and morals. A psychodynamic theorist may argue a person has a fear of public speaking because of a deeper underlying issue in the unconscious, the fear of rejection. A person may fear public speaking because of a repressed memory of being belittled or rejected by an overbearing parent or teacher. The humanistic perspective was developed as an alternative to the behavioral and psychodynamic perspectives because it offered more of a positive approach to human behavior. This is why humanism is often considered the third wave. In this perspective, our behavior is not determined by our past or simplistic rewards and punishments. Instead, we choose our paths, we make individual choices, and strive for personal growth. Quite simply, the glass is half full, not half empty. A humanist may argue that experiencing fear is a motivator. Fear is not seen as a weakness. People purposely seek out difficult tasks to overcome their fears and triumph over adversity. There is an old saying in psychology, everything psychological is simultaneously biological. In the biological perspective, the key idea is that biological processes control our thoughts and actions, including hormones, neurotransmitters, and genes. A psychologist from the biological perspective may focus on the parts of the brain that are key actors in the production of fear and anxiety while public speaking. They may focus on the amygdala, for example, an almond-shaped structure deep within the brain that alerts the rest of the brain and body a threat is present. A biological psychologist may also focus on what specifically causes physiological changes in the human body, like norepinephrine and cortisol. The sociocultural perspective argues that people's thoughts and actions are influenced by cultural factors like stereotypes, cultural norms, media, and racial differences. From the sociocultural perspective, fear of public speaking may be caused by cultural norms. Every culture has implicit societal rules, also known as folkways, on eye contact when talking, use of hand gestures, or how much emotion to express in public. Another explanation is that people from individualistic cultures like North America and Europe, as opposed to collectivist cultures like Asia, may feel more pressure to succeed on their own. Lastly, the evolutionary perspective argues that people's thoughts and actions are adaptations for survival. These ideas were developed from the work of Charles Darwin. Evolutionary psychologists may argue that fear of public speaking is caused by our brain perceiving this event as actual real-life danger. Our brain interprets public speaking as a life or death situation, same as being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, sending our body into fight or flight mode. The 7 perspectives I just covered are vital to know when taking any psychology course. They reappear in multiple units. The key idea to understanding them is to look for specific words and apply them to new scenarios. Let's take a look at the 7 key words on the left. Can you match them to the perspectives on the right? Pause the video here and take a moment to match them. How'd you do? Continue to brainstorm key words for each perspective. Lastly, on a separate sheet of paper, explain each scenario above through the lens of each perspective. This will give you a better sense of your overall understanding.